Hi everybody, welcome to the Manifold channel. Today we're going to compare the speed of Manifold with the speed of PostgreSQL, which we'll call Postgres in this video. And let's start by linking in a very big project. I'm going to link this project in, and this is a 1 gigabyte project that links instantly and opens up like that. We've created a data source here called Aus Hydro, for Australia Hydro. I'm going to double click open the map, and you can see that it opens instantly. This is the famous data set, which is 1.4 million objects that was that had kind of a craze on Reddit a couple of years back. Shows all the waterways in Australia, and with using 3 layers: lines, areas, and another layer of areas for lakes. And as you can see, it opens, pans, and zooms instantly in Manifold. I'm going to alt-click on the name tab there to change the size of the to undock the window, and we're going to make the window about that size. And I'm going to do that so to make room for another undocked window here, which is going to show you the same thing that's taken from Postgres. So let's connect to Postgres. And the way we'll do that is I'm going to right-click here and choose Create New Favorite Data Source, and I'm going to choose PostgreSQL Local, which is a data source that I created earlier connecting to a Postgres. Manifold can connect to virtually anything, and also has a tremendous advantage of allowing you to save favorites, so that once you enter your database credentials for something like a local database, you can just work with it like that. I've opened it up, and there you can see the contents of that database, that DBMS. I'm going to create a new map here, and I'm going to call that new map Aus Hydro Postgres, so we know which one that is. I'm just going to create the map, and let's open that up. I'm going to undock it, and let's make it the same size. You'll see that windows in Manifold will snap to the size of another window near them. So now we have 2 windows that are both exactly the same size. And let's start dragging and dropping layers from the Postgres database into here. I'm going to start with the watercourse lines. And where these came from is these are exactly the same lines that are in here in the Manifold data set. What I did is I opened the Manifold data set, and then I loaded Postgres with this. And the way you load those from Manifold into a Postgres is you just simply come here and you do something like copy this, right click and copy, and then click on that and click paste. And doing that, you can load stuff into Postgres extremely rapidly, far more rapidly than the shapefile loader in a Postgres can do it. We loaded all 1.4 million objects. Here's another layer. 1.4 million objects from Manifold into Postgres in about 10 minutes. And it takes you about 2 hours to do it with the Postgres shapefile loader. So if you're working with Postgres and you need a good ETL tool to extract, transform, and load, Manifold is just the ticket that works way quicker than most other stuff, and certainly quicker than the native shapefile loader. I'm now looking for the lakes. There it is, the lakes drawing. I'm going to drag and drop that in as well. So now what we've done is we've basically duplicated on the right in purple the PostGIS PostgreSQL layers. And here on the left we have the Manifold layers. How these are all drawn are kind of artifacts of how Manifold sorts out and shows different layers from different data sources. But these are all exactly the same objects. It's just that here they're drawn with some slightly thicker formatting, so they're shown a little bit bigger. But in any event, as you can see, Postgres is slower than Manifold when it has to show lots of objects. When you try to, so I'm going to right-click on here, control-click on that on this tab to zoom to fit. I'm going to control-click on this tab to zoom to fit. You can see that Manifold is always instantaneous, even if there's a lot of objects. So I'm going to zoom to fit there by right-clicking and dragging. Zoom to fit here. It takes Postgres a little bit longer to fill in all that stuff than Manifold if there's a lot of objects. Now, if you actually zoom into a region where Postgres can work with smaller objects, like this, then Postgres is actually very quick. In fact, for small numbers of objects, it's just as quick as Manifold, or at least it seems to be. Manifold is still a little bit faster, but Postgres has that limitation. That's part of the architecture of Postgres when working with the PostGIS spatial data tool, that if you're zooming into regions where there's a relatively small number of objects, Postgres can handle it quite fast. But if you're working with large numbers of objects, for example, if you want to do analytics on the entire data set, zoom to fit there, zoom to fit here, you can see that Postgres is significantly slower. And that's a side effect of Radiant architecture being much faster. The reading database is what's used within Manifold, much faster than Postgres for spatial work. Let's see what else we can do here. We can also work with Postgres as if it was native to Manifold. So we can do things like, well, we can reformat this. So for example, instead of, if we want these areas not to be that color purple, but to be lines to be this color, we can instantly change them. And Postgres will reformat them. And Manifold, when Manifold connects to something like Postgres, Manifold knows how to store all this stuff using local Postgres nomenclature, so that it's stored, exactly the way you'd expect it to work in terms of Manifold style and formatting. Even though you can use incredibly complicated styling things here and incredibly complicated symbology, it still works perfectly cool and perfectly fine. I think that's the color purple that we used. Nah, that's not the right color purple. Let's use that color purple. Yeah, that's better. Yeah, let's use that one. Well, whatever. Anyway, so that's a good look at Postgres and good look at how Manifold works with Postgres. One of the other reasons, by the way, why you'd want to use Postgres as a data store for Manifold, in addition to interoperability with other things like QGIS or ArcGIS or other sorts of things that might be using Postgres as a data store, is that you can have multiple different Manifold connections from multiple different machines connecting to the same Postgres database. So you can have different people opening up these different drawing layers and working with them at the same time from different machines and editing them simultaneously. That's a very convenient feature which Manifold allows you to do. You can also do all this by having other data sources here as well. Manifold has all sorts of different databases that it understands. For example, create a new data source using, well, MySQL, Oracle, SQL Server, DB2, any of those things, and or virtually any database you've ever heard of, using things like ODBC and other connection technologies. And you can have all those open at the same time in the project. You can save these projects so that later on, if you want to open them up and work with them, you can do all that. Let's view that in active window. Let's view this in active window. We're working with different objects and different data sources, different components and different data sources. I just clicked on let's do this, view in active window here. Let's do that, view in active window there. And what we're doing is we're using locations from this Manifold data source that we've linked in, and we're using it to control stuff that we're doing in Postgres. You can combine different data sources as well. So, for example, let's create a new favorite data source, which is a Bing map satellite layer, and bring in stuff from Bing. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to drag and drop the Bing satellite image into here. Let's put the lines back up on top of that. And you can see how Manifold is combining layers from PostgreSQL and layers from Bing in the same Manifold display. What's really amazing about all this stuff is that Manifold right now is what we're doing here is we're working simultaneously with three different data sources: a locally linked Manifold file, Manifold project file, a Postgres database server, which could be on the other side of the planet, and a Bing map satellite image server, which probably is on the other side of the planet since we're filming this from Europe. And all this is working perfectly despite having 1.4 million objects over here in this window, 1.4 million objects here coming in from PostgreSQL there. And nonetheless, it's still working without the slightest fear of crashes. It's all working virtually instantaneously, or in the case of PostgreSQL, working still darn fast and impressively fast. And we don't have to worry about any crashes, and that's a very different experience than something like, say, well, let's say at Arc, where if you tried this with Arc, it probably would have crashed halfway through, putting all this stuff together. And certainly once you started panning and zooming around all this stuff to take a look at different objects and different windows from different web servers, you'd have high odds of a crash. And I don't mean that as any disrespect. I like Esri software. I think it's really wonderful. But it's well known that Manifold is just superbly better quality in terms of being totally, completely, rock solid, crash-free, with just massively fast, massively parallel performance all the time. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. You can try all this in the free Manifold Viewer. Everything that we've seen, that we've done right here in terms of opening these projects and loading stuff in from different data sources, you can do with the free Manifold Viewer. download it, give it a try. It's fully parallel, just like Release 9. It'll do everything Release 9 will do, except it's read-only. It won't save projects. And you don't have to register. You don't have to pay anything. There's no advertising. There's no upsell trying to get you to buy commercial products. No request for donation. None of that. You can use it. You can hand it out to your friends. Hand it out on your website. Use it for free and enjoy. So thanks for watching, and goodbye from Manifold Land. Well, that was fun. If you want to see more, visit us at www.manifold.net. As always, Manifold delivers the world's most advanced, highest quality spatial products for GIS and DBMS at a low price that you can afford. Once again, that's manifold.net. See you soon.